Have you ever walked into someone's home, and even though it looked clean and nice, something just didn't feel right? Like the air felt empty. The space looked fine, but it didn't feel cozy. Didn't feel like anyone really lived there. That's what Claire felt in her own house. She had spent months making it perfect. She followed all the tips online, got rid of everything she didn't need, painted the walls white, bought simple furniture, no extra stuff, no colors, no noise, just clean space. But after all that, money felt slow. Work got quiet. She didn't want to cook. She stopped inviting friends over. And honestly, she didn't even sit in her living room anymore. Everything looked good, but it didn't feel good. She had no idea the problem was a Feng Shui mistake. One that blocks energy, pushes money away, and makes luck feel like it can't find the door. If this kind of Feng Shui wisdom speaks to you, thank you for being here. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, or even drop a comment below. It helps YouTube know you're part of this quiet, mindful shift. Because in Feng Shui, when you take too much out of a space, you can end up taking the life out of it too. Claire didn't plan for her house to feel empty. She just wanted less stuff, less mess, less noise. She followed all the posts that said, clear space, clear mind. She boxed up old things, donated clothes, gave away decorations that didn't spark joy, painted her walls a soft white, replaced her couch with something simple and gray, got one new rug, beige, quiet, clean, and at first it really felt nice. Walking into a calm space after work, no clutter on the counters, no bright colors grabbing attention, no visual noise, just space. But a few weeks later, that same space started feeling different. Not peaceful, just flat. She'd come home and drop her bag on the same clean chair, open her fridge, but not feel like cooking. Stand in the middle of her living room, then walk straight to her bedroom without turning on the light. Something about the room felt too quiet, not in a restful way, in a weird, nothing's moving kind of way. Even her dog stopped sitting on the rug. He used to nap there every afternoon. Now he barely stepped into the room, chose the hallway instead. One afternoon, her cousin dropped by with coffee. They hadn't seen each other in weeks. Claire had been working from home, keeping to herself. The visit felt good for the first 10 minutes. They chatted, laughed a bit, but the energy didn't last. Her cousin stood up and stretched, walked around the living room, and gently touched the shelf where Claire used to keep her books and photos. Now it held one candle, one white bowl, nothing else. There was no comment, no joke, just a soft hum in the air, like both of them knew something was missing, but didn't know how to say it. That night, Claire sat alone on the edge of her sofa. She didn't turn on the television, didn't scroll her phone. She just sat there, feeling like the room was too clean to feel alive. In Feng Shui, this is where things go wrong quietly. When a space is stripped of all warmth, no color, no softness, no personality, the energy has nowhere to land. Qi doesn't flow in a vacuum. It moves through textures. It connects through memory, emotion, and layers. When there's nothing for it to bounce off, it starts to slow. Then it sinks. Claire didn't lose money overnight. It wasn't like that. But she started noticing small shifts. She'd forget to check her bank balance. Online orders came more often. Food delivery bills went up. A subscription she meant to cancel kept charging her. Little things that felt like no big deal until the end of the month. And still, the room looked great. Everything was neat, minimal, in style. But the air was still. No laughter, no music, no smell of dinner, no sign of movement, no sign of her. She didn't realize it, but she had made a Feng Shui mistake. Not by doing something bad, but by doing too little, by clearing too much, by trying too hard to be calm. She had left no space for life. Money didn't crash, but it drifted. Her days didn't feel bad, but they felt slow. Her mind didn't panic, but it didn't light up either. She had created a space that was too silent to grow anything, including joy, connection, or abundance. And here's what Feng Shui knows that trends forget. Peace isn't about empty. It's about balance. A clean space still needs a heartbeat, a memory on the wall, a plant by the window, a corner that's a little messy because it holds something real. Claire didn't need to bring back all the clutter. She just needed to bring herself back into the room. Claire used to move through her home without thinking, throwing her coat on a chair, walking back and forth to refill her tea, letting the sunlight chase her from room to room. But now her steps had slowed, not because she was tired, because the house wasn't calling her anymore. It was quiet, too quiet. The pillows stayed in place. The dining chairs hadn't been pulled out in days. Even her robe in the hallway hung the same way every morning. No shift, no drag, no sign of motion. She didn't notice it all at once. It came in bits, like walking into the kitchen, standing there for a moment, and realizing she didn't want anything, or forgetting what she came in for. She used to light incense just for fun, play music while folding laundry, open the windows even if it was chilly, just to feel the air move. Now the curtains stayed closed. The music stopped. The incense box was in the back of a drawer she hadn't opened in weeks. It was like she'd hit pause and never hit play again. There's a moment when stillness becomes something heavier. Claire felt it one morning when she sat on the edge of her couch, trying to get up but not really wanting to move. The room looked beautiful, neat, simple, but her body didn't feel like doing anything. No urge to stretch, no push to start the day. And that's when she realized her space had stopped moving, and so had she. In Feng Shui, energy is supposed to move like water. Soft, bending, always in flow. But water that doesn't move? It sits. It grows heavy. It loses charge. The same happens to qi. When a space has no motion, qi gets lazy. And when qi slows down, so does everything else. You don't crash. You just fade. Ideas feel slower. Cash flow gets weird. You spend more time deciding what to do than actually doing it. Claire's money didn't disappear, but it felt like it stopped building. She'd pay things late, not out of carelessness, but because she forgot. A package sat by the door for 2 days. She used to open them with excitement. Now they just stacked up quietly. The bills weren't overwhelming, but they weren't smooth either. Tiny leaks. Little things that slipped through the cracks. Like her energy. Her body knew something was wrong. Before her mind caught up, she started skipping breakfast, leaving dishes in the sink overnight. She didn't stop cleaning. She stopped moving with purpose. It was like her house stopped needing her. And in return, she stopped showing up for it. The worst part? She thought this was normal. She thought this was what adult life looked like. But no, this was stuck energy. And stuck energy always shows up in how you live, how you earn, how you think, and how you feel inside your own space. Feng Shui teaches that homes are like lungs. They breathe with you. When you walk with rhythm, they carry that rhythm. But when you freeze, they freeze too. And nothing grows in a frozen room. Claire didn't need more things. She needed movement. She needed to drag a chair across the floor, to open a window and let the curtain flutter, to dance barefoot while brushing her teeth, to let the hallway lights be turned on, even if just for a few seconds. She needed to invite energy back, not by buying, not by styling, but by living. That's how you bring money back. That's how flow returns. That's how life feels real again. Claire wanted her home to feel mature, not childish, not chaotic, not like the old apartments she used to rent in college with mismatched chairs and leftover mugs. So when she got her own place, she decided it was time for a real space. She opened Pinterest, started saving photos that looked elevated. Clean walls, soft whites, beige on beige. Everything tucked, everything quiet. The kind of room that looked like no one ever lived there, and that was the goal. It was beautiful. It was tasteful. It was exactly what she thought success should look like. But it was also the beginning of a slow, quiet drain. She didn't realize it at first. She was still riding the high of making it her own. The paint was fresh. The pillows matched. The candle holders were just the right height. But every time she walked into that room, she noticed she didn't want to stay long. She thought it was just her mood, or the weather, or work stress. But day after day, the same pattern showed up. She'd walk in, pause, and walk back out. Even when she tried to sit, her body stayed tight. She didn't sprawl. She didn't rest. She didn't breathe deep. The room was still. Too still. It didn't hold her. It judged her. And slowly, her energy started to mirror that space. She worked less in the living room, started defaulting to the kitchen counter, stopped lighting her scented candles, avoided the mirror in the hallway, let emails sit unread, forgot her laundry was in the dryer for 3 days. None of it was dramatic, just slow erosion, a gentle slide into a version of herself that was quiet in the wrong way. Feng Shui doesn't care if your home looks expensive. It cares if your energy is expanding inside it. It cares if the room breathes back when you exhale. If it says, stay, instead of don't touch. Claire's mistake wasn't the color palette. It was the intention behind it. She decorated to impress, to prove she had arrived. But in doing that, she pushed herself out of the space. The flow of energy chi isn't attracted to status. It's attracted to aliveness, to soul, to movement, to the texture of someone being fully present in their own skin. Her space had none of that. It had lines, edges, structure, but no softness, no curves, no surprise, no invitation. And her life started reflecting it. Money still came in, but it didn't feel solid. Projects got delayed. Invoices got paid later. Her savings account stopped growing. She had enough, but barely. The cash didn't stick. It passed through like air. She wasn't leaking money because of spending. She was leaking qi. In Feng Shui, when you decorate for image instead of energy, your house becomes a mirror of who you're pretending to be, not who you are. And that version? She doesn't know how to feed you. Claire didn't realize that her couch, the one she chose because it looked clean, was the reason she stopped reading. Or that her art, those soft gray swirls in that metal frame, made her feel like she had nothing to say. It wasn't about the objects. It was about how they silenced her. She used to be loud in a good way, playful, creative, a little messy. She'd lose things in her old place because it had corners and character and life. But now, she never lost anything, because she barely used anything. She remembered once spilling coffee on her old thrifted armchair. She laughed, wiped it with a sock, kept sipping. That chair had history. Her new couch? She wouldn't dare. She didn't even eat on it. It looked successful, but it drained the joy out of her. That's how qi tells you something's wrong. Not with a bang, but with a lack of sparkle, a lack of motion, a loss of interest in things you once loved. When your space isn't feeding you, it doesn't matter what it cost. It's not Feng Shui. It's Feng Fake. Claire started bringing herself back into the space. Not with money, but with meaning. She took down the wall art she never liked and put up a photo her friend took on a road trip. She brought out an old blanket from her mom. Let the pillows get crooked. Put books back on the table half read, totally human. And the air started moving again. Not just in the room, in her chest, in her thoughts, in her income. She stopped performing success and started experiencing support. And that's when the money didn't just show up. It landed. Not flashy, not dramatic, just stable. Like the house was finally saying, "We got you." If this speaks to you, don't wait until the space is perfect. Feng Shui is personal. It's real. It's yours. If this feels like your life in disguise, drop a comment, like, or subscribe. It's a tiny act of energy, and energy always returns when it's real. There was a corner in Claire's home that she never used. It sat between her bookshelf and a standing lamp, just a small empty pocket of space. She didn't think much about it. It wasn't ugly. It wasn't cluttered. It was just there, neutral, out of the way, not bothering anyone. But that corner had been quiet for too long. And one day, as she was walking past it, she stopped without meaning to. There was nothing special happening, just a small shadow on the wall, and a feeling she couldn't name. It was the kind of stillness that doesn't feel restful. It feels stale, like air that hasn't moved in weeks, like silence that forgot how to be soft. She didn't know it yet, but she had walked right into one of the strongest Feng Shui mistakes of all, the energy dead zone. It started as a feeling, Not loud, just subtle things. She avoided that side of the room. Didn't clean there as often. Didn't decorate it. Didn't think it mattered. But slowly, other parts of her house began to pick up the same stillness. Rooms began to lose their warmth. Lights felt dimmer. Curtains stayed closed longer. And her energy? It started to slow in the same way. She became quieter. Not calm, but detached. Less laughter. Less calling friends. Less moving through her own space. She didn't feel tired. She just didn't feel pulled by anything anymore. Feng Shui energy chi flows like water. It wants to move, to circle, to touch, to connect. But when it hits a spot that has no life in it, no motion, no color, no purpose, it stops. It pools. It dies there. And when energy dies in one corner, it starts dragging everything else down with it. Claire didn't know that her neutral corner was slowly creating a drag on her wealth energy, on her creativity, on her emotional focus, on her momentum. Her cash flow didn't drop all at once. It just got hesitant. Clients delayed decisions. Unexpected bills appeared. Her payments took longer to land. There was always something hanging. The energy wasn't broken. It was just blocked. And worse, it was invisible. That's what makes this Feng Shui mistake so dangerous. You don't see it. You don't feel panic. You just stop feeling anything. The energy becomes numb. So do you. She began noticing other spaces like that. A hallway she never used. A chair no one ever sat in. A corner behind the television that hadn't been touched in months. And every one of those places felt the same. They weren't loud. They weren't ugly. But they held nothing. And in Feng Shui, nothing is a type of weight. These dead zones were stealing from her. Not her stuff. Her spark. She remembered reading somewhere that clutter is bad Feng Shui. So she had cleaned. Cleared. Stripped down. But no one said anything about too much empty. No one warned her that when you leave a space without purpose, energy doesn't get the memo. It just sinks. That's what was happening to her flow. It wasn't being stolen. It was being left behind in places she forgot to care about. The deeper truth? Claire didn't ignore those corners because she was lazy. She ignored them because they mirrored parts of herself she didn't want to deal with. Old doubt. Old fears. Emotions she never gave language to. That quiet part of her that felt disconnected but didn't want to admit it. Feng Shui works on the surface, but it reflects from deep inside. When a part of your house gets frozen, it's often because a part of you is too. And unless you reclaim it, you'll feel that pull in your life, in your timing, in your money, in your motivation. She didn't need to renovate. She just needed to bring attention back. So she added a plant. A chair she actually liked. A small light that turned on at sunset. A book she wanted to reread. Tiny acts of movement. Tiny acts of life. And the weirdest thing happened. She felt like her house saw her again. Not just the Claire who vacuumed, but the Claire who laughed. Who stretched? Who played music while cleaning? That energy started moving. And the moment it moved, so did everything else. The cash flow stopped stalling. Clients reappeared. She slept deeper. She woke up with ideas again. Because Feng Shui doesn't reward perfection. It rewards presence. And you can't be present in places you've abandoned. That's the trap of pretty but empty. It looks fine, but it makes you smaller every time you pass it. Claire didn't need more space. She needed to re-enter the corners she forgot. That's where the money got stuck. That's where the luck waited. That's where her flow was hiding. In the places she thought didn't matter. Claire had fixed the decor. She brought the flow back into her rooms. She softened the energy, filled the empty corners, added movement, added meaning. And yet, something still felt slightly off. Not as sharp as before, but enough to notice. She'd walk into a room that now felt warm and right, but the moment would fade too quickly. She'd sit in her favorite chair with her morning coffee, but still scroll through her phone longer than she meant to. Still hesitate to start the day. It was subtle, but it was real. She had changed her home, but she hadn't fully changed with it. That's when it landed. You can shift your space, but if your energy doesn't come back into it, it's still missing something. She had been so focused on fixing the flow of qi that she forgot to check where her own presence had gone. Her house was healing, but she was still halfway gone. She cleaned up her home, but not her attention, not her breath, not her body in the space. Feng Shui isn't just about how things are placed. It's about how you show up to them, how you sit, how you walk, how you speak, how you feel. The space can support you, but only if you let yourself be supported. Claire had been moving through her house like a manager, not a resident. Checking, adjusting, fixing, not inhabiting. She was applying Feng Shui to objects, but not embodying it. That was the missing piece. And it hit her one day when she stood in the middle of her living room, looked around, and couldn't feel herself in the space. Not the version with tasks, but the version with joy, with weight, with presence. She realized she hadn't danced in her home in over a year, hadn't cooked a meal with music playing, hadn't sung while vacuuming, hadn't walked barefoot just because she loved the feel of the rug. She had feng shuied her home, but she hadn't returned to it with her full spirit. In feng shui, energy isn't just about layout. It's about embodiment. You're not just arranging qi. You are qi. And when you treat your home like a performance space or a task to manage, you strip it of the very thing that brings it alive. Your real, present, messy, feeling self. She remembered how, years ago, she'd walk around her old apartment humming nonsense songs. She'd burn toast, laugh at herself, spill water, let the light hit her face at weird angles. She was alive there, even when the space wasn't beautiful. Now, her house was beautiful, but she had become the ghost. That realization cracked something open. She cried on the couch, not because she was sad, but because she finally felt herself land again, in her own home, on her own floor, in her own breath. The house hadn't been the whole problem. It was how she had stopped letting herself belong to it. That's the deepest feng shui mistake. When you disappear from your own space, when your life becomes so clean, so controlled, so managed, that there's no room left for your spirit to move. From that day on, she did small things differently. She started talking out loud to herself again. started opening windows just to hear the wind, let herself wear big socks that didn't match, lit a candle and forgot to blow it out on time, Saturday on the floor, laughed, took naps, invited her own body back into the conversation. She began living in the space again, not moving through it, but letting it hold her. And the space responded. The energy got fuller. The light looked different. The sounds had more warmth. And her life? Money didn't just return. It stabilized, stayed, built. She wasn't chasing it. It wasn't leaking. It was meeting her. Because Feng Shui works when you return. Not just your things, not just your effort, but your full, breathing, alive self. And once she got that, there was no going back. So maybe the real Feng Shui mistake wasn't the rug, wasn't the empty corner, wasn't the color of the couch. Maybe it was forgetting that the house was waiting for you. Not the perfect you. Not the "I'll fix it later" you. Just you, as you are. Because sometimes the space gets stuck when you stop showing up. And maybe what your money, your energy, your luck have been waiting for isn't a crystal or a new plant. It's just the version of you that knows how to be present. So if this story found you at the right time, like it did for Claire, hit like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Not just for the algorithm, for the version of you who's finally ready to come home. Because here, we don't Feng Shui for perfection. We Feng Shui to remember who we are. And we share 2 new videos every day to walk that path together. 1 room, 1 shift, 1 breath at a time. Your space speaks. Wisdom listens.